Hello everybody. So this is going to be your video on the arteries and veins of the head, neck, and upper system. You have two models that show these pretty well. You have our lovely artery vein model here, and then we have Leslie right here. So I'm going to go through these models one by one with y'all's lab list. So I've told y'all before how big your aorta is. It comes out of your heart here, loops up and around and goes back behind your heart. And y'all can see it go all the way down to here. All right, so it's going to hit your pelvic area. Your aorta, because of that, has a couple of different names depending upon where the blood is. Where the blood goes up here, this is the ascending aorta because it is going up and out of the heart. The arc, where it turns around, is called the aortic arc. Off of your aortic arc comes three of your big major arteries that you guys need to know. Over here, the leftmost side, you have what is called the left subclavian artery. It branches off and you can follow it up and around, and it's going to go down the arm, right? Because remember your bones, your clavicle is right here. Subclavian means under your clavicle. So this is your left subclavian artery. The one in the middle is it's a carotid artery, and it's going to come up and up the left side of the neck. So this is your left carotid artery going up your neck. And if you notice on this side of your body as well, you have a right carotid artery going up the right side of your neck, and a right subclavian artery going down your right arm. But you have this little artery branch that's right here between the two, where these two have merged together, that is coming off of your aortic arch. And this little artery branch right here to help reach the right side of your body from where your heart is leaning left is the brachiocephalic trunk. So you have the brachiocephalic trunk here leading to your right carotid and your right subclavian. Now, following your carotids up, when you get to around the jawline here, and this is not that clear on this model, your carotid forks, and one artery goes to the inside of the head, and the other artery starts feeding the outside of your head, like where your facial muscles and that kind of thing are. The artery that goes to the inside is called your internal carotid artery. The artery that's going to keep going to the outside is your external carotid artery. And also off of your subclavians here, you have this little artery offshoot that's going to run up your vertebra, called your vertebral artery. Blood's going to do its thing, get to all the places around here, and then it's going to need to come back to the heart. And that's where we get to the veins. So, as it's coming back, you have a vertebral vein that's running up and down your vein, right? And the two major veins in your neck, instead of calling them the carotids, they are called the jugular, right? Just the same, you have an internal jugular and an external jugular. External is from the facial muscles. Internal is from the internal stuff. And then they all meet at either the right or the left jugular veins. They come down. On the right side of the body, you have the right subclavian vein dumping straight into the superior vena cava. And you have the right jugular dumping straight into the superior vena cava. But just the same as what happened with our arteries, this time it's flipped for the left side. You have the left jugular and the left subclavian veins meeting here, and you have this one merging junction to get to the superior vena cava. And this is your brachiocephalic vein leading right here. And those are the major arteries that are north of your heart. I'm going to show them to you on the Leslie model now. All right, so this is your Leslie model. We're going to go through the same information, right? You have your aorta here, and this is your ascending aorta. The brachiocephalic trunk branching over to the right because your heart leans on the left side, right? So you have the brachiocephalic trunk here, and then the right arteries on your Leslie model kind of just disappear underneath the muscle. The left side, though, you can start to see that aortic arch, and you see the left carotid going up and the left subclavian, or subclavian, and part of the clavicle right here, right? Going over. If we follow that carotid upwards, just like I told you, you can see it better on your Leslie models here. So you follow this carotid artery up, and you can see the fork in the road, where one is going to fork off here, keep going up, and then feed like the inner workings of the brain right there. So that is your internal carotid artery. And then this other one here, you can see branches off and starts branching out to feed your jaw muscles and other such things. So this one right here is your external carotid before it starts forking. Right? Same deal with your jugular. You have the internal jugular here, external jugular meeting to make the left jugular, and it all goes down. And you have the left jugular here, the left subclavian. They meet to create the brachiocephalic vein, dumping into the superior vena cava. And on the right side, you have the right subclavian. And underneath all these tissue here, you would have the left jugular dumping into your superior vena cava. You can see extra offshoot arteries, veins right here. I'll show you the vertebral ones in just a moment, but first I'd like to point out the veins and arteries that feed your thyroid here also feed off of these carotids. It is for your artery list, right? You actually have an artery coming to feed the top of your thyroid gland, and an artery that is not shown on this model that comes up to feed the thyroid gland from the bottom. This is your superior thyroid artery right here. And then the one that would exist that is not on this model that comes up from the bottom is the inferior thyroid artery. There are two veins that leave the thyroid that dump back into this brachiocephalic trunk to be recirculated. And they enter the thyroid either in the middle or the bottom. So you have an inferior thyroid vein or a middle thyroid vein. The middle thyroid vein is not on this particular model, and the inferior thyroid artery is not on this model, but they are still on your lab list, and I wanted to point them out now. Slightly out of order from your lab list, though. So I went ahead and I flipped Leslie around so you can see the back of them, or her as today's example is. You can see the arteries and veins that are running up and down the vertebra. These are your vertebral arteries and veins. Vertebral artery is flowing up. Vertebral vein is flowing down. Right? Also, further down your lab list, not in this section, but still need to point out here, if you follow your spine down on this model, you can see that there are, in fact, arteries and veins between each rib cage. They only depicted it between this one, though. This is your posterior, what is it called? Posterior, nope, I just had this on the list. Posterior intercostal artery and posterior intercostal vein. So posterior because it's the back, intercostal means between the ribs, and then artery or vein. You have one of these between each of your ribs in the back because it's what runs along your rib to feed all of these muscles and whatnot. But this is the only model I have seen on any campus here where these arteries and veins are depicted. They are on the Leslie model, and it's the back of Leslie. And that's this section of arteries, guys. Let me know if you have any questions.